welcome everyone here today. And I wanted to introduce Dr. Gerber from Midwestern University. She and her students have prepared this presentation, and we chose specifically this presentation to begin with because I am living in the world of disinformation, as many of you are. And I ask people all the time, are you getting the vaccine or not? And I am sure you are all experiencing the same answers from friends or colleagues. And it's like, well, I don't know. I heard it's not so this or that. So we thought that this would actually be of their series of presentations, because they're going to be giving 4 and maybe a 5th. I chose this one first because I knew we would already be in this week of vaccines, and definitely will answer and dispel myths. That's the important part. I mean, I'm talking about a Shiva yesterday for someone who's mourning, and the daughter told me that she and her friends all posted on social media the picture of them getting the vaccine. They all volunteered for one specific reason, just to show people that it's normal. And the more you see others getting the vaccine, the more in your own mind you'll realize, oh, maybe that isn't an issue, because we live in that world that so much information and false information gets into us through Facebook, social media, WhatsApp, emails, friends, and forwards, as they say. So again, we're going to introduce Dr. Don Gerber of Midwestern University to present on how vaccines work. So thank you very much, Don.
Thank you so much for having us. I am very excited to present this information to your community. The students, my 4 students, Sammy Hugh, Janine Liaco, sorry, I totally butchered your last name, Catherine Kovovich, Vic, and Kyle Stanley. We all put, I would guess, probably close to 7 or 8 hours into this presentation, trying to make it as less opinion. So we tried to keep our opinion out of things and very fact-based for you. And we also worked really hard at keeping it at a level that is for the general public. So I just wanted to kind of let you know that we worked on this. The students practiced presenting on Monday, and so we are very excited to present this to you. While we all contributed to this presentation, Catherine and Kyle, who are Doctor of Pharmacy student candidates, will be presenting a majority of it, and I will be jumping in to support them, and then also helping with the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So we are very happy to be here today, and with that, I will turn it over to Catherine.
Hello, everyone. I'm Catherine. And one of the first things we wanted to start out with was that the simplest way to think of vaccines, as they're like a most wanted list that helps your body and your cells recognize what to attack. Next. Okay, so we're going to be discussing different types of vaccines today. 3 of the previous vaccines that we've all probably had by now are live attenuated, inactive, subunit recombinant polysaccharide, and conjugate. And then the new vaccines we're hearing lots about are the messenger RNAs. Next. So first we're going to start off with 3 different previous vaccines. Next. First, we have the live attenuated vaccines. These are a weakened form of the germ that causes the disease. It is no longer infectious. The vaccines are similar to the natural infection that you would occur, say you interact with this germ in your natural life. They create a long-lasting immune response, but it is challenging to transport the vaccines because they often require refrigeration. Some of these vaccines you may have heard of or even had are measles, mumps, rubella, rotavirus, smallpox, and chickenpox vaccines. Next. Some inactivated vaccines would use the dead version of the germ that causes the disease. This provides less protection than live vaccines and may require a booster. Some of these vaccines we see are such as the flu vaccine, polio vaccine, or rabies vaccines. Next.
Hey, Catherine, slow down a little bit, okay?
Oh, I'm sorry. And our third previous type of vaccine is the subunit, recombinant, polysaccharide, and conjugate vaccines. These use specific piece of the germ, such as its protein or sugar, or a casing around the germ. It provides a very strong immune response, and it's safe for everyone, even those who are immunocompromised. You may also need booster shots to continue immunity with these types of vaccines. We see these vaccines in whooping cough, pneumococcal disease, meningococcal disease, and shingles. Next.
Okay, now we will talk a little bit about the messenger RNA vaccine, which is relatively new on the scene. Next slide. So the messenger RNA vaccine is actually the type of vaccine that we use in our efforts to treat the coronavirus. Next, please. Okay, so messenger RNA vaccines. They cannot actually give somebody COVID-19. It's important to note this because messenger RNA vaccines do not contain the live virus. They actually contain a lot weaker version, which is not able to give somebody the virus. And the way this mRNA vaccine works is that viral mRNA makes viral protein, which is attached to the virus here, circled in red in the photo, which our cells recognize and later on fight the coronavirus. Next slide. So when you get the vaccine, it will direct your body to produce a protein, again, circled in red in the photo, that teaches your body how to fight off the virus. Next slide. There are a couple different manufacturers that are actually authorized and recommended in the USA, and those are Pfizer and the Moderna manufacturers. A few others are in phase 3 clinical trials in our country, and those are AstraZeneca, Janssen, and Novavax. Next slide. Okay, so the Pfizer coronavirus vaccine. This is delivered in 2 doses, with the second dose being given 21 days apart from the first dose. The shot is administered in the muscle of the upper arm, and it is recommended for ages 16 or above. It must be stored at -70 degrees Celsius for up to 10 days. And because of these storage requirements of the vaccine, it's essentially impossible for people to line up at their community pharmacy and just receive the vaccine. It has to be properly stored at these conditions and thawed out before it can be administered to its participants. And as of November of 2020, the clinical trials for the Pfizer manufacturer were said to be 95% effective. And these results were recorded 28 days after the first dose from the data from 43,000 participants, excuse me. The observed efficacy post-phase 3 trials for people over the age of 65 was said to be 94%, which was this great data. Next slide.
So I do want to just have a clarifying sentence here. When we talk about you just can't walk up to your community pharmacy and get the shot within the next couple of minutes, we're not saying you won't be able to get the vaccine at your local community pharmacy. You will likely have to get an appointment because they do have to go through this process. They will have to thaw it, reconstitute it, and go through this whole process. So with our flu vaccine in years past, you pretty much just walk up to your local pharmacy and say, hey, do you have time to give me a flu shot? And they can give it to you, probably if they're not busy within the next 10, 15 minutes. Definitely that will not be the case with these. You will have to more than likely make an appointment because of the time period to basically prepare to give you that vaccine. So I just wanted to make that clarifying statement.
Okay.
Kyle, back to you.
Okay, thank you. So the Moderna manufacturer, this is also given in 2 doses as well. However, the second dose will be given 28 days apart, unlike the Pfizer vaccine, which was 21 days. Again, the shot can be administered in the muscle of the upper arm, and this one is recommended for ages 18 or above. A little bit different storage conditions. This vaccine is stored at 2 to 8 degrees Celsius for up to 30 days. And as of November of 2020, this vaccine was said to be 94% effective based on their clinical data. And the clinical data from Moderna was gathered with 30,000 participants in a phase 3 study. And this makes sense along with the Pfizer vaccine because both manufacturers use the same technology to make their product. Next slide. AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. So as of December 28th of 2020, there were large-scale phase 3 trials in progress, and they're currently in progress in the United States. They are not yet available to us. They're only available in the United Kingdom so far. And as of December of 2020, these are said to be 70.4% effective. Next slide. So FDA Emergency Use Authorization. The first COVID-19 vaccine is being put out under the Emergency Use Authorization approved by the FDA. And we will learn more about what Emergency Use Authorization is in this next slide. We have a short video for you guys to watch. Next slide, please.
All right, I am going to try to see. Rabbi Levi, would you give me a thumbs up if you can hear the video?
Definitely.
Otherwise, I have a backup plan.
Okay.
Oops.
Americans rely on.
I think you stopped your share. But if you share it again and select optimize for video, you can do that in the middle of your presentation as well, by the way. All right, guys, bear with.
Americans rely on the FDA to evaluate whether medical products, such as drugs, diagnostic tests, and other medical devices, have been shown to be safe and effective. When a public health emergency hits, like the infectious disease outbreak we're facing with COVID-19, there may be an urgent need for products to diagnose, treat, or prevent a medical threat. In certain types of emergencies, the FDA can issue an Emergency Use Authorization, or EUA, to provide more timely access to drugs, diagnostic tests, or other critical medical products that may help during the emergency when there are no adequate, approved, and available options. The EUA process is different than full approval of these products because in some emergency situations, we just cannot wait for all the evidence needed for full FDA approval. Instead, the FDA evaluates the options very quickly using the evidence that is available and carefully balances any known or potential risks of these unproven products with any known or potential benefits to the public of making them available during the emergency. For example, while we need to move quickly, it is not in the best interest of Americans for the FDA to allow use of a test that doesn't work as it should. False test results can contribute to the spread of an infectious disease like COVID-19. EUAs are just one of several tools the FDA can use to help make important medical products available quickly during emergencies. For more information on FDA's efforts against COVID-19, please visit fda.gov.
Okay, so we know a lot of you probably have plans or even have made your appointments or already received your vaccines. So we just want to let you know what you should expect after you receive your vaccine. So any mild symptom is okay. You may even feel flu-like symptoms, and it may affect your ability to do daily activities. But say you have a mild fever, mild chills, mild tiredness, or mild headache, that is totally normal and you're just your body's natural response. If you have pain or discomfort, always feel free to reach out to your doctor. They may suggest you take some Tylenol, Advil, or you can try applying a clean, cool washcloth to the area, and make sure you drink plenty of fluids after your vaccine. Next slide, please.
Hey, Catherine, please slow down.
Oh. Okay, so if you are experiencing any severe or persistent symptoms, so longer than 24 hours, make sure you seek medical care. So that would be any severe fever, tiredness, chills, or headache that are lasting more than 24 hours. Give your doctor a call. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little pain or discomfort is totally normal, but feel free once again to call your doctor. Say you're experiencing symptoms more than 24 hours after your vaccination. With most COVID vaccines, you do need your 2 doses to be fully protected. So we would suggest if you have any mild side effects that you still go back for that second dose because it'll be worth it. And it takes time for your body to build protection. So you may receive your second dose and you still should wait at least a week or 2 to make sure you have that full protection. And one of the most important things is that we continue to still wear masks and stay 6 feet apart and avoid crowds, even after you have received both doses of your vaccine. Next slide, please.
So I think the question that always comes at the end of vaccine presentations and discussions, and I think this is on all of our minds, when will things be back to normal? You know, we've got this vaccine. When are things going to get back to normal? And a lot of that depends on herd immunity. And in fact, most vaccines, their success is really dependent on herd immunity. And the WHO, or the World Health Organization, defines herd immunity as the percentage of people who need to be immune in order to achieve herd immunity. And the thing here is that it varies with each disease. So smallpox, for example, or measles is an excellent example. The measles vaccine has been around for decades, and we know that for protection, herd immunity, measles requires 95% of the population to be vaccinated, and that the remaining 5% will be protected by the fact that measles will not spread among those who are vaccinated. And you may have heard numbers, and when we were researching this presentation, I heard various numbers from various experts. Some experts that I listened to said that they thought maybe only 70% of people would have to be vaccinated against COVID-19. Other experts said they thought maybe that it was closer to 95% of the population would have to be vaccinated to provide COVID-19 protection, that herd immunity. So the best answer I can give you right now is we don't know. All these numbers you may hear from experts are estimations. So that is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. I wanted to share this video that defines herd immunity visually, because I think sometimes it's important for those of us who are visual learners to be able to see what we're talking about as well. Here goes that. Or not. All right, give me one moment. I've got a backup plan.
I know why running on the treadmill 7 days a week doesn't work for you when you're trying to lose weight? Because it never.
You've heard that old saying, there's strength in numbers. Well, it turns out numbers may be our greatest defense against the spread of COVID. It's called herd immunity. And the way it works is that once enough of us become immune to the virus, spread of the virus slows, and eventually the pandemic could die. Thanks to vaccinations, herd immunity has been effective at eliminating polio, smallpox, and until recently, measles. Unfortunately, we don't see lasting herd immunity against viruses that mutate quickly, like the flu or the common cold. Herd immunity is a place we'd like to be with COVID, and sooner rather than later. But how do we get there? It could happen naturally as the virus makes its way through our communities, but that could be dangerous because, as we've seen, many people with COVID become severely ill, and for some, it can actually be deadly. Many have been wondering, do people have some immune protection after they recover? Experts tell us they think that's true, but it's not proven, and if it's true, we're not sure just how long that immunity may last. But since herd immunity is our goal, to know if we're there, we first need to understand how fast the virus infects other people. That reproduction rate is what scientists call the R0 of the virus. And for COVID, that number is somewhere between 2 and 3. So that means each person with coronavirus can infect, on average, between 2 and 3 others. The second part of the herd immunity equation depends on us, specifically how many of us are already immune. In a world where no one is immune to COVID and each of us is at risk, the virus can spread like wildfire. But imagine a world where there is herd immunity. Say 75% of us are already immune. That means 3/4 of the people exposed to anyone with the virus just won't get sick. So even if a few of us have the virus, the rest of us who are immune stop it from spreading. That's the kind of numbers game we're talking about. But it's not a game. It's actually a formula based on that reproductive rate of the virus. Knowing that, we can figure out how many of us need to be immune for us to reach that sweet spot of herd immunity. And that critical threshold for COVID is when 1/2 to 2/3 of the US population is immune. That means somewhere between 150 and 216 million Americans need to be immune to meaningfully stop the virus from spreading throughout the country. But right now, most experts say we're probably a long way away from these kinds of numbers. So just like with many other infectious diseases, the showstopper will be when most people can get a vaccine, once we have one that's proven to work. And the great thing about a vaccine is that it can help build a person's immunity, but without making them sick. Until then, we can all do our part to stop the spread of COVID through physical and social distancing, washing our hands, and staying home when sick. To learn more about herd immunity, visit abcnews.com.
This is SARS-CoV-2. It belongs to the family.
All right, Catherine, back to you.
Okay, so this is just our final reminder, just to emphasize we need to continue wearing those masks and staying 6 feet apart and avoiding crowds, even after you've received both doses of your vaccine, just so we can try to get a handle on this pandemic as fast as possible. All right, next slide.
So we thought that you would be interested. I know Rabbi Levi had tried to show this last Wednesday, but here is that screen, and that the number of people, or the types of people who are now eligible for the COVID-19 vaccine has changed. There is now a 24/7 vaccination pod, which is a point of distribution, is now open at the stadium where the football team plays. It's called now the State Farm Stadium. It does require an appointment, but it is an easy link to go onto to determine if you are eligible. And they have now moved into that 1B setting. And that includes education and childcare providers, law enforcement, adults aged 75 and older, adults living in congregate settings, and then other essential workers. And we should be moving into 1C very, very soon, which is adults 65 and older. So now we have gone over some of the very basics of how vaccines work. And I know that there were questions popping up in the chat. So Rabbi Levi, do you prefer to moderate the discussion section, or would you prefer I just go through the chat and repeat the questions and help answer the questions?
Yeah, you could definitely just repeat the questions, and then afterwards we can take anyone who wants to actually talk it out loud.
Perfect. And would you prefer that we leave the screen up, or would you like to see faces?
No, I think it's best with faces, so you can stop that share.
That's what I thought we would be moving to.
All right, perfect.
All right, so I will open up the chat and I will start back up here. So this question is from Paula, and she is asking, does that mean that the vaccine is only good for 30 days after it is made? So Kyle, I'm going to give you that opportunity. Are you prepared to answer that question, or would you like me to answer that question?
I could probably answer it to some extent, and you can back me up if you think there's a better explanation. But pretty much, Paula, the vaccine will remain good. So when we say 30 days, it has to be stored at those conditions. So when we remove the vaccine from storage and we let it thaw out and it's ready to be administered, it has to be given at that point. So, and Professor Gerber, if you have anything you want to add to that.
So I think maybe her question, and this is us being very detailed oriented, there's two things that kind of could mean the definition of made. So for us as pharmacists, we think of made possibly meaning manufactured, from the time that the product is manufactured to the time that it is viable. And then another definition, keep in mind we're pharmacists, so we're nitpicky like that, we're thinking reconstituted. So meaning that one of the vaccines requires to be frozen, it has to be thawed, and then we have to add what's called diluent to it, and then reconstitute the vaccine. And so that is kind of those two definitions for made from our perspective as pharmacists. I believe, now I am not an expert in manufacturing, that you may be asking from the time it was made, as in the sense of when it left the factory, so to speak. So let me see if Paula maybe, and Paula, please feel free to unmute. This is supposed to be a discussion if you would like to define your question more to help us answer it more specifically.
It was 2 points. When it was manufactured, and from the time it was manufactured, that 30 days is what I thought you were talking. It was only good for 30 days. And second of all, we're hearing that people have thawed it, and then at the end of thawed, defrosted it. And then at the end of the day, they have all this stuff they defrosted, nobody else is in line, we're throwing it out, and they throw it out. Questions?
So Catherine, if you want to repeat that question and you feel comfortable answering it, please go ahead.
Yes, Paula, I just wanted to address the refreezing at the end of a vaccination clinic. So when you get the vaccine, those that will reconstitute it, I actually did this over the weekend. That's why I'm throwing my 2 cents in. So we pull it out of the freezer, we dilute it, put it into the syringe, and then we set timers. And those timers are actually, there's a 2-hour grace period to those timers. And so those say we make the vaccine, we give it 4 hours before it needs to be distributed, so injected into someone. So at the end of the day, about a few hours before the end of our vaccination clinic, we started counting up all the vaccines that were already made to be sure that there would not be any extra. And then all of those that volunteered, if you wanted to get a vaccine, we counted up to make sure that there was enough left over. And then so people that were volunteering were able to also get their vaccine. So I know personally at the clinic I worked at, we made sure and we're very on top of not over making that syringes.
The short answer is, and Catherine, I thought you did a lovely description there, and I so appreciate you volunteering for that event. They are desperate for volunteers, and our Midwestern University students have been pretty active in volunteering to help with those vaccination clinics. The short answer is yes. So unfortunately, let's say they made up a batch, the timer went off, people no-showed for various reasons, all the volunteers have been vaccinated, they would have to unfortunately destroy the rest of that that batch. It's just an unfortunate thing. We don't know the stability or the safety concerns, or probably more the efficacy, so how effective it would be if we gave it to somebody outside that window that it was studied. I will tell you that no healthcare provider enjoys destroying product that should have been used to help someone. So no one is doing it on purpose. And unfortunately, life just does happen, but we want everybody to get the most potent that they can if they choose the vaccine. So that's kind of why you hear about doses maybe being disposed of at the end of the day. Paula, that was an excellent question. Thank you so much. Catherine, that was a great explanation. Thank you so much. I want to move on to the next question here. David looks like he just has a comment that the vaccines at the State Farm Stadium are actually at 95th Avenue and approach west from the Maryland Avenue. I do know that they have signs up with directions and things like that. So the signage seemed pretty clear from me driving on the 101 yesterday and coming home from clinic. Catherine, do you have any comment about signage? Is there good signage to make it very clear where patients can go?
Actually volunteered at the one at the fairgrounds. So that was Banner Health, but yes, signage was very clear there as well.
Let's see. The next question is from Arlene, and she read, I read Moderna vaccine is probably viable or provides protection for 2 to 3 years. And my understanding is that they have done scientific models to determine how long the vaccine provides immunity. And that's where you're possibly getting those numbers from. From a hard scientific data standpoint, science does not know. Those are predictive models.
I read it in Art magazine yesterday. There was a whole article on it. And let me tell, we had our vaccine yesterday. We had Moderna. Let me just tell you one thing that you mentioned that I would really question. In the article I read, it said, if you have discomfort, I had pain in my arm for half an hour. It went away. At night, before I went to sleep, it started paining again. And then I had some chills and I slept and it's fine. But I've had that with flu vaccine where it hurt a lot more for a lot longer. But I read that you should not take Tylenol or any of those things to reduce the pain because it interferes with the effect of the vaccine. So that was also in this article yesterday. So really be careful about that. Read about it before you take anything.
Oh, Arlene, you're taking medical advice from an art magazine? Is that what I just heard?
No, AARP, AARP, Senior Magazine, AARP
Magazine.
Magazine.
Said art. I'm like, wow, that's
no, AARP, AARP, Senior Magazine. I read 2 articles on the vaccines yesterday. So I'm just telling you what I read. I don't know anything. I'm not a doctor.
Maybe that's a good, the last point you made is a good one for Dr. Gerber to address. Is it a problem to take Advil or Tylenol, or is Tylenol better than Advil afterwards? That's a good question.
Sure. So the question is, so we said that if the patient is having discomfort that they can choose to use ibuprofen or Tylenol, and that data is from the FDA. And so that is where we're getting our information, is from the FDA. Now I can speak from experience being a healthcare expert, and then also being a mom. So I had small children who went through that whole vaccine process when they were tiny, when they were little, and there was a lot of discussion. So this discussion about Tylenol and ibuprofen for pain and discomfort and fever after a vaccine decreasing the efficacy is not just a discussion that we've had with the COVID-19 vaccines. This is a discussion we have about all vaccines. There is some hypothesis that when our bodies are responding to the vaccine, that a sign that our body is actually responding positively to the vaccine is these symptoms, that possible some pain, some chills, some pain or discomfort. And are we blunting that when we blunt those symptoms with Tylenol or ibuprofen? So this discussion has been happening for a very long time. So it's not just with the COVID vaccine.
My advice is if you can handle it and it's not anything monumental where you have to go to a doctor, go through it without taking any of that if you can, just after what I read. I don't know if that's right or not.
You took the words right out of my mouth. So my next comment was going to be, that being said, that if you can tough it out and it's not it's not causing you horrible discomfort, to go ahead and let it run its course. But we don't want people to be in pain and discomfort. And so I don't think that the literature that I've read, and I'm pulling this information from a mom who cares deeply about her children and don't want her children to be in discomfort. The data hasn't really been there to say that there's this dramatic blunting of vaccine efficacy or effectiveness when you use those. But I would say that yes, try to tough it out. If it's not terrible, if it's mild, go ahead and tough it out. I will say, because we are speaking to an audience who is traditionally 65 or older, from a geriatrician standpoint, so a person who is board certified in caring for patients who are over the age of 65, I would cross off the ibuprofen. So we have many concerns about using medications like ibuprofen, naproxen, any medication called an NSAID, an NSAID, in people over the age of 65. It can increase blood pressure, damaging to the kidneys, and increase your bleeding risk. So I would stick with Tylenol in your community of people who are over the age of 65.
Thank you. One other thing, if you're taking baby aspirin for blood, to thin your blood, I stopped a couple of weeks before going because they ask you that, and they don't want you to have blood thinners unless you have to take them through your doctor. So that was another thing I would recommend, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've heard that even with an appointment, that wait at State Farm Stadium is hours long. Is that correct?
So I have not volunteered at the State Farm Stadium. Unfortunately, I have two small children at home and their school is closed. And so I have not been able to.
You said fortunately, right?
What?
You said fortunately, I hope.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Fortunate from my mom perspective, unfortunate from my caretaker heart that wants to jump in and volunteer. So that State Farm opened on Monday. And so I have just heard from other faculty members who don't have small children at home. I believe my friend Dr. Dietrich said that he had to wait close to 40 minutes. So I know that there is some waiting involved. I don't know about hours. That being said, last Wednesday, you guys talked about how small your community is, and you were able to bring in that wonderful doctor. I actually do know the person, the pharmacist in charge down at the State Farm stadium vaccine event. And if you want, I can text him and ask him how long the wait is if you would like me to.
Yeah, I heard 3 or 4 hours, even
I'm
at
sure
6
they
and
got
7 in the
better.
morning.
Rhoda, you know, they just started. It's logistics nightmare to be in charge of that. I'm sure they're getting better on time.
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi, thank you so much for understanding that. It is the biggest dispensing pod that I am aware of in Arizona, and it might be the biggest one across the United States. They have actually the National Guard has been sent to help with all that with directing traffic and supporting volunteers and things like that. I will text Dr. On and see if he can tell me how long the wait is, just because I'm curious.
I was there this morning.
Oh, who's that?
Elaine.
And what did you experience?
Elaine Cates.
We got there at 6:15 in the morning because we had an appointment. I did not find the signage wonderful. We wound up in the testing portion first, and they had to send us back. It was, I would say, until we got through with our paperwork, which was fine. We had to wait about 20 minutes for that. Then they sent us to another line, and we had to wait again. All in all, we were there about an hour and 40 minutes from the time I pulled in the driveway until we left. Now, we had to stay an extra 15 minutes because Michael is on a blood thinner.
Yeah.
So it was well worth it. At our age, what else do we have to do? We're locked in we were locked in a car. There's no complaints whatsoever, even if I had to stay another hour or two.
Should we?
Thank you, Elaine.
Should we
stop taking the baby aspirin?
No. I don't know.
In the pharmacy world, we actually do not consider 81 milligrams of aspirin to be that high of a bleeding risk. Kyle or Catherine, if you would jump into your resources and see if the FDA or the CDC or one of the vaccine prescribing information address the aspirin, I would really appreciate that, because my gut says 81 milligrams of aspirin shouldn't be a problem, but I do want to confirm. So Kyle, Catherine, do your research at the moment and then just unmute when you find the answer and interrupt us.
Thank you.
I do want to move on to the next question.
Yeah, Dr. Gerber, before you go back to chat, I know that someone has their hand up. Carol Webner, do you have a question or?
No, I have a comment, Rabbi, if I may.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
We had a wonderful experience. My husband and I had our vaccine this morning. Our appointments were for 11th. We had it out in Chandler through, I guess that's the Dignity Health site. Everybody was on the ball. The process went smoothly. Our appointments were at 11:34 and at 11:40. We got there a little early because we're anal about being early. And nobody questioned the fact that our appointment was in a half an hour. We just went into the chute. They flagged us through. One of us has an allergy, so they tied a ribbon around our rear view mirror, the mirror on the side of the car. And obviously we got into they had separate lanes for people with allergies. So maybe that's why it was quicker. So we got there just after 11. We were out of there back on the freeway by 11:45. Everybody was so helpful. Everybody knew what their job was and how to do it. I was so impressed. And I don't impress easily. And the National Guard was out, and it was just an amazing experience. So, I understand that other places might be maybe not as geared up, or the Glendale Arena is just open for the 24/7, so maybe they are short of volunteers. But I can't praise this highly enough. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Rabbi,
thank you.
we had a
Hold on,
good.
Arlene, one sec. We're gonna go back. I want to do some questions before comments back and forth. So this way
Well,
we
I just
get.
want to know, do you get your shot in the car? You don't leave your car?
We
Yeah,
did,
you
we
stay in the
did.
car.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Dr. Gerber, back to the next question.
All right, I just got a text message from the director of pharmacy down at the stadium, and he said today they're running at less than 30 minutes delay. So there you go. I don't know if maybe on Monday when they first started and things were getting tested, maybe they were running behind, but today he said less than 30 minutes.
They did 4,000 people yesterday.
Wow.
All right,
So
next
from
question.
Andrea, oh, sorry.
Perfect. No, you. I'm making
Okay.
sure you're.
So
I'm helping you
Andrea
monitor.
says, what does 90% effective actually mean? Can you please give an example? The easiest way to think about this is if you have a group of 10 people that are vaccinated, 9 of them would be protected against the virus. Now, this always brings in a little bit of controversy in the fact that, wait, I got vaccinated, why am I not 100% protected? And this is true for nothing in science and our bodies, just the way God made us, nothing is ever 100%. And so in very simple terms, that 90% effective is 10 people vaccinated, 9 people will be 100% prevented from getting the disease if exposed. But nothing is 100% effective. Really, when you get a vaccine, you're really saying that you are decreasing your risk. Not saying there's no risk, there's just you're decreasing your risk of getting a communicable disease. So that kind of feeds into Judy's question of, can those vaccinated still be a carrier? And when it comes to COVID-19 vaccine, we are COVID-19 in general, we are learning every day. Every day, the scientific community is learning more. Kyle, I kind of saw maybe you were ready to share some information.
Right. So in some of the data that I gathered, people can be silent carriers. So with Pfizer and Moderna, they only were looking for patients who they vaccinated who actually had symptoms. So it is possible to be vaccinated and be asymptomatic and be a carrier. So that's what I had to share. So it is important that everyone continues to social distance, wear masks for those that are asymptomatic, even after being vaccinated.
Can I ask or sort of add to that? I read something yesterday that says that even Pfizer and Moderna haven't studied that yet, because they just need to study one side of it to put the vaccine out.
Yes.
Right.
You know, and I would like to say that I personally, my opinion is that I think that the FDA is doing a really great proactive job of collecting data. So traditionally, the FDA really leans on providers, physicians, pharmacists to collect data after a medication or a vaccine has gone to market, for us to turn in that information to the FDA. They are actually asking for that data collection post the COVID-19 vaccine to be communicated to them directly from the public. So once you've been vaccinated, there is a place to go, and you should have received information about how you can directly report any information to the FDA, and they are gathering that and studying it. So my personal opinion, I thought that was great. Why, remove the middleman, so to speak, of having to report information to your provider, and then they have to report that information to the FDA. So I'm very happy that we're going to be collecting this data and they're going to be studying this data. Kyle or Catherine, did you find any information about 81 milligrams of aspirin in your search of either the CDC, the FDA, or the prescribing information for either of the vaccines?
So
your left arm should you be?
I was not able to specifically find anything, but I do know that every clinic, they have a nurse and or doctor assigned that if there is anything questionable in your medical history, they will pull them over and they will assess you to make sure that you should be receiving the vaccine or not.
Have the appointment and they both.
Kyle, did you find anything?
Not that pertained particularly to the vaccine. It was more so for hospitalized patients who had lesser complications because they were taking 81 milligram baby aspirin.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there because it is a discussion and it's not published. There is some theorization that actually 81 milligrams of aspirin will actually help protect or lessen the effects of COVID-19 infections. So kind of two separate discussions, but I will probably do some research about the whole 81 milligrams of aspirin and be in contact with Rabbi Levi when we maybe find that answer. Let's see. Next question. Oh, Myra, do you know if I had my ancillary nodes removed, will the vaccine work correctly? That is not an answer that I know off the top of my head, and we would have to do some research into your special situation. I'm going to copy your question and add it to my list of things to maybe get back to and to do some research on. That's a very specific question, and we may not know the answer to that just yet.
I thank you.
You're welcome. Steve says, if you have received the 2 shots and then need to have a COVID test, this is a good question. For any reason, will the results be affected by the vaccine? So what Steve is asking is, if you get the 2 series, so shot 1, shot 2, and then you have to have a COVID test, maybe to get back to work, or maybe a family member is saying, hey, before you come see the new baby, I want you to get a COVID test that's negative. Will the results be affected by the vaccine? Kyle, I'm picking up on some body language. Did you find that information in your research?
Yeah, so I've read a little bit about this. As far as viral testing goes, it will not make you test positive, the vaccines. But if you're tested for serum antibodies, it will cause an effect in that testing. So not the viral testing, but antibody testing will change based on the vaccine, from what I read.
And I actually know someone who was in the study, and that's how he knew he didn't get the placebo. He got antibodies. So that was, yeah.
Excellent.
Right.
Thank you so much, Kyle. Rabbi, we are coming up on 1:28 according to my time. We are available, but I want to respect your time.
No, for sure. So, and I think anyone who is not able to stay on, they'll obviously go off before that. So if you're good, then for sure, please continue.
Okay. All right. Andrea also asks, if you have mild symptoms from the vaccine, is that the same as having a mild case of the disease? So we can answer that question very straightforward based on the mechanism of the COVID-19 vaccines. So remember that this isn't a test, sorry. I'm so used to speaking to students. So if you can think back, Catherine covered our very 3 traditional mechanisms, or how our very traditional vaccines work. And typically in the past, we exposed you to pieces of the infection, the disease, germs. We exposed you to attenuated or a killed version. And those, it was thought that maybe you could get a little bit of that, like having a mild case of something with the vaccine. Now, if you remember back to when Kyle's part of the presentation, the vaccine does not expose you to any part of the COVID-19 germ. So this would not be the same as having a mild case of the disease, because the vaccine does not give you COVID-19 in any way. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Paula has a question saying, I may be misreading this. Why
I
didn't
think
they?
it's why don't they say to also wear a mask? Paula, are you referring to after you get the vaccine?
Yes, in your presentation, you listed after you get the presentation, then you should still social distance
Yes,
on everything else, but you didn't say continue to wear a mask.
yes.
Apologize if I
Right.
said that. You should still wear your mask. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Thank
slide
you.
24. The picture says wear a mask, stay 6 feet away, and avoid crowds.
It might have been blocked.
Just on the Smile
Very
on
good.
Seniors, they were having a physician speaking about the vaccine. Yeah,
So yeah, hopefully you see here on slide 24, we say even with vaccines available, wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, and avoid crowds.
I think it was on a different slide where it didn't say that. It only said 6 feet apart, avoid crowds, and then there was one other thing. There was nothing about masks.
All right, well, all right, but now at least we got the answer. You can review that
Yes.
later.
Continue to wear a mask.
Yes.
Yes,
thank
please. Yes, please.
you. All right, Rena, your question's up. Doctor, it's on the chat.
Okay. Which vaccine is being offered at the stadium? Oops, wrong button. So I believe that the vaccine being offered at the stadium is the Pfizer vaccine. Let me pull up my notes from my meeting with.
Yes.
I can confirm that because I've signed a number of people up, and you sign like a use permission, and it's for Pfizer.
It is Pfizer. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm giving you the correct information. And then if we can't get the second dose, is the first dose any use? This is an excellent question. And you may have heard a lot of discussion in the news. I believe, is it Switzerland? Is thinking about just vaccinating everybody, like regardless of whether there's a second dose in theory that has your name on it after you've gotten your first dose, that they're just going to vaccinate as many people as they can. And I believe because the vaccines do have to be given in 2-dose series, that the first vaccine dose really does not, it gives you partial immunity, but it does not give you full immunity, and it's not been studied as just a one-time dose. So there's no data to say that that does a good enough job to protect you. I would be interested, Rena, if you can unmute and maybe give us an idea of why you're saying, or a situation, maybe you're an example of why you couldn't get the second dose. What are you thinking?
See if she's
Basically, just the publicity about not reserving dosages and just giving it to everybody as a first dose.
So that is not happening here in the United States. In the United States, if you get your first vaccine, there is a matching or vaccine that essentially has your name on it. The United States and the CDC is not allowing for that. So that was very clear. They are not going to be moving. They are not encouraging people to do that. In the United States, there will be a second dose available for you.
If for some reason you can't get it in time, is there a window that you have to get it, the second dose in?
Yes, there is a window. So Kyle, I think you had that information, didn't you?
I did. So it's different for each manufacturer. For Pfizer, you have 21 days to get the second dose. And for the Moderna vaccine, you have 28 days to get the second dose. So that is your time frame for both of those manufacturers.
But is there an over limit? In other words, if you can't get it in the 21 days, if you get it in 30 days, is that too late already?
I'm actually unsure. So if Dr. Gerber, if you know, or I can even look it up.
Thank you, Kyle. Why don't you look that up for Moderna? And Catherine, would you look that up for Pfizer, please, and see if there's a maximum window?
I don't think so.
they'll get back to us on that.
I got the impression it wasn't a window. It had to be exactly 20.
What you're supposed to do with the question?
No.
I don't know.
Is that true?
All right, so
The doctor, Steve, the doctor that was on last week said that they have an optimal time, but there is a window. I'm not answering the question that was asked that Kyle and Catherine are checking up.
yes,
But there isn't it never has to be exact or it won't work. The question was the most optimal.
Can you
Can
get
I-
it clear? Then the
okay, Catherine, what did you find?
Yes, so on the CDC website, it states there's a grace period of 4 days, and that is for both Pfizer and Moderna.
So you have a grace time of 4 days. So that is where that information lies. Now, I know that there is some information, and Kyle and Catherine, I'm going to have you do a double check on this since you have it available to you. There is some discussion of what happens if you get the first dose of the vaccine and then you develop the COVID-19 infection, like what happened to my friend. She was probably exposed. Do they have a wait time after your COVID-19 infection has passed to get your second dose?
That's a great
Kyle and
question.
Catherine, if you would see if you can find that information.
I have a question, quick.
Well,
I have not,
Rhoda, I want to just go through the chat ones first, because I see they're still adding. So give it a minute.
it's a quick question.
They're all quick questions.
Okay, I'm going to do what Rabbi Levy tells me to do. I'm going to go back to the chat. All right, so the booster shot, is it different than the first or exactly the same? Kyle, Catherine, I am so sorry to interrupt you. So Kyle, maybe since you talked about the COVID vaccines, is the second vaccination exactly the same as the first vaccination?
To my knowledge, yes, it's the same.
It's the same. Yep,
Same.
that's what I.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like you get a half of a dose, like you got 1 milliliter the first time and you get half a milliliter the second time. It's exactly the same.
Same vaccine and dose given for a second round.
Yep. And then I think this is oh, Catherine, yes, please.
So I did find your answer on, say you received the first dose and then you develop COVID from an outside source. The CDC, once again, is just recommending that once you recover, you can go in for that second dose. While you may be over your grace period, you should still just receive the second dose.
So a specific situation there. So to make sure our answer is clear, you have a 4-day grace period of that 28 or 31 days between the first and the second. If you're on your way to get your second dose and the car blows the tire blows a flat and you're stuck on the side of the road and you miss your appointment. Or maybe something happens where you did get exposed to the infection and you did have the infection, then they are recommending that once you recover from the infection, then you go ahead and get that second dose once you've recovered and you're symptom free. And then I believe, Rabbi Levi, this question, if I'm interpreting correctly, you cannot get the first dose from Pfizer and then the second dose from Moderna. And you are absolutely correct. So you have to get shot 1 from Pfizer and shot 2 from Pfizer and shot 1 from Moderna and shot 2 from Moderna. You have to stick with whichever manufacturer you went with. So you are correct. You can't get the first one from Pfizer and get the second one from Moderna. All right, from Judy, is it safe to have the COVID vaccine? Ooh, this is an excellent question for my pharmacy students. Is it safe to have the COVID vaccine within some of the days of a Prolia vaccination? So that is an excellent question that I did not prepare my pharmacy students to ask. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this question, Judy. I'm going to put it on my list of research, and I am going to email my answer to Rabbi Levi, if that's okay.
And probably the next question as well, which was Eliquis.
Yes, I will add that to my list as well. And we'll do some research and answer those questions. Let's see, the next question from David. If there are two of us, should
I
we
would
sit
skip those.
next?
Let's do the ones that like go down to Rena, because David's question, a lot of people have answered in the chat below it.
Okay, all right.
Does the vaccine reduce severity?
So the question is, does the vaccine reduce the severity of symptoms if one does get the virus? And like all vaccines, we do believe that you have been vaccinated against it, but you do still unfortunately fall into that gray zone of not being 100% effective, that the symptoms are less, they are mild, and that you would not get the severity of the infection that you would have being unvaccinated. So you are correct. I'm going to move on. Lori's question 2, Areas 2 has vitamin, okay, so ARADS. So this is the eye vitamin, for lack of a better word, very popular, has vitamin E in it. Is it okay to keep taking it before vaccinated? I'm going to copy Lori's question to my to-do list and answer that as well.
Is that, I know that Lori wrote another comment, the same one a bit later. Is that because it's a potential blood thinner, or?
So vitamin E does increase your risk of bleeding. Typically, we see it at doses higher than 800 milligrams. So I didn't want to say anything because I have not done the research to know if the AREDS vitamin content of vitamin E would be considered problematic. This is not medical advice in any way, but I would guess, since it's only 180 milligrams of vitamin E, and we see that increased bleeding risk with vitamin E at greater than 400 milligrams, I would think it's okay. Catherine, do you happen to know, with your experience, did you see the pre-screening form? Was vitamin E on there?
I actually didn't see it. I'm sorry.
Kyle, I'm going to ask you, did you happen to run across any of this in your research preparing for this presentation?
Not what I can say confidently. I can't.
All right. I am going to add vitamin E to my research list. And we will get back to Rabbi Levi about that.
All right. And then the next question is, which allergies are of concern?
Go ahead, Kyle.
Sure. So which allergies are of concern? I did read about anaphylaxis. So like kind of like a bee sting. If you have allergic reaction to a bee sting, that was listed on the CDC. So I think I would have to double check, but I think they even had a trial where 75% of the people who experienced anaphylaxis had occurred within 15 minutes of receiving the vaccine. So I would have to double check myself.
The allergic response is why they're having you, you guys may not know this, but part of that waiting period is that you do get your vaccine and then you have to go into a designated area and wait while they observe you to make sure you don't have an allergic response. Typically, based on studies, it's not common to have a reaction outside of that time period. So Sherry asks that she heard that the Moderna vaccine is better. At this time, there's not been a head-to-head study. So they've not studied the Pfizer vaccine over the Moderna vaccine head-to-head. And so we can't answer that question. There's just no data available to know if one of the vaccines is better than the other. The next question is, have neurologic symptoms and allergies being worked up for all kinds of tests? Will doctors still recommend a shot? That is getting very, very specific into your personal situation. So Sherry, I would really encourage you to have a candid conversation with the provider who is working with you in that aspect and get their expert opinion for you, because you're such a very special and unique situation. All right, let's see. David, do they give you an appointment for the second vaccine when you get the first, or do you have to register again? Also,
Elaine,
really good question.
Elaine, did they schedule you or did they tell you to go back on the website?
No, they gave me a little card and they told me to come back February 3rd. They didn't say anything about making an appointment. I don't think they'll turn me away, but the appointments aren't open yet for that day.
We got, when we got ours, they said come back the same time in 28 days.
Right, but the difference is you did it at a clinic. Like I also went to one of these POD sites and it was a banner one and they definitely scheduled you on the spot. But people that are going to the ones now, I have been told that you have to go back online to schedule and February is not open yet.
Right, but I don't think, I think if I showed them that card and I didn't have an appointment, they would take me anyhow. I might have to wait a little bit longer. The lines are longer at that place, but really it wasn't that long today.
Okay.
All right. I think that before we take an audio question, last question from the chat, because the other ones are repeated. How much vitamin D3 should you take to boost immunity?
This is an excellent question. I'm glad you asked this. So there was some discussion from Dr. Fauci. So Dr. Fauci made the very famous statement that he takes vitamin D. It is not that vitamin D protects us or provides immunity. What we know is that people who are vitamin D deficient are at higher risk for getting the infection. So if you are vitamin D deficient, please take your vitamin D. If you're concerned that you are vitamin D deficient, talk to your healthcare provider, talk to your primary care doctor, and they will test you. But there is no evidence that if you have correct vitamin D levels, so you are not vitamin D deficient, that above and beyond adding excess vitamin D would protect you in any way.
Thank you. And then I know, Izzy, we'll take your question in half a second. Charlie was answering about the Eliquis earlier, that he takes it every day. They didn't make an issue over it. And I don't know if they questioned you about it, Charlie, or not, but I know, Dr. Gerber, you can anyways, when you research that, just share it and we'll make sure. All right, Izzy.
Somebody asked me a question about it.
Oh.
I mean, they didn't make an issue over it. They just said, okay.
Oh, okay. All right, Izzy, go for it.
5 milligrams twice a day. And I also heard that you're not supposed to have a drink before 2 days before or 1 day after a shot. And I'd have a drink every night.
We should do a happy hour together, Charlie.
Yeah.
Tell me what time, we'll Zoom. Izzy, go for your question. What do you have?
Pinky and I did the vaccine yesterday at the fairground. And I got to tell you, it was fantastic. 45 minutes in and out, including the 15-minute wait. They booked the appointment for the second shot immediately. They give you a little card. And the worst part of the Phoenix Fairground was that the Wi-Fi for the people taking the data was lousy. But otherwise, I've got to give them all credit. It's a humongous logistical operation that they have done, and all credit to them.
Right. All right, any other questions that were not put in the chat? First of all, I do want to thank you all for this presentation. A lot of information. I love that there's live information, sort of that you're researching it as they come in. So that's awesome. So thank you. And if anyone has any questions, please do take that opportunity now. I am going to officially close the Facebook Live feed though. So thank you all for joining on that end.
I just want to say,